Okay, hi, good morning, everyone. A warm welcome. I think we all heard the delegations yesterday that India is at the forefront of digital revolution. And at the same time, it's important for us to build sovereign capabilities and skills. Taking this discussion forward, imagine a world where networks doesn't only connect us, but anticipate us. And it's no longer a connectivity, but a conscious capability. To take this forward again, I would like to call the fellow panelists who will be the part of discussion that is shaping the network economy, the NaaS, the network as a service imperative. I would like to call upon Mr. Shrikant Mehta from AWS. He's a head of telecom business development India in Southeast Asia. Uh, Welcome, Mr. Shrikant. We have Mr. Nanda from EdgeCore, the Vice President, Product Management and India Operations. With 2 decades of experience, he leads R&D for multi-service routers and other products. I would like to call Mr. Kishore Kumar from Spirent Communications. He's a head APAC South. Would like to call Mr. Alok Shukla, who leads the enterprise business for Airtel. And Mr. Suresh Chitturi, the Senior Director, Standards Research at Samsung India. Uh, I would like to welcome all the panelists. But before we start the panel discussion, we have Shri Rudra Narayan Pillai. He's a member of DCC and Head of Technology Vertical, Department of Telecommunication. He will be the keynote speaker on this topic. I would like to welcome Shri Rudra Narayan Pillai ji on stage, please. Thank you, sir.
Sri Nanda Ravindran, VP EdgeCore Networks, Sri Suresh Chitturiji, Senior Director, Samsung India, Sri Shrikant Mehta, Head Telecom Amazon Web Service, Sri Kishore Kumarji, Director Technical, Spirent Communication, Mr. Jogesh Sharma, Partner KPMG, distinguished the guests and delegates, good morning to all of you. So today's topic is the shaping the network, the economy, NaaS imperative, network as service. It's a really privilege to be here at the India Mobile Congress 2025 among leaders, innovators, policymakers, and experts who are shaping the next phase of India's digital journey and economy. Over the past decade, we have seen tremendous progress in the connectivity, infrastructure, and access in India. Since 2016, the rapid expansion of 4G coverage brought high-speed connectivity to every corner of the country. And with that saturation projects, it reaching to all the villages. And furthermore, with the implementation of the augmented BharatNet, this fiber will reach to all the villages. All the villages will be fiberized in a due course. Thereby, India's digital journey enabling even faster and smarter, providing the smarter services. In just 22 months, India set up more than 5 lakhs 5G BTS and covering 99% of the districts on 5G map. The leap in infrastructure supports a mobile subscriber base of nearly 1.2 billion, highlighting the scale and reach of India's digital surge. Now we stand at the cusp of another digital evolution, the 6G, which enables AI native and cloud-driven ecosystems as its foundational block. The question is not limited to connectivity alone, but how our network can be used, customized, and monetized. Having said this, let's talk about the network as service. The more the network we expand by the different operators, so this is also not adding to the ecosystem in terms of sustainability. So therefore, the government is coming out many policies which supports network sharing. Now we're talking about the innovations in this network domain. NaaS means turning the telecom network into a service that can be requested, configured, and consumed on demand. Just like cloud computing, we have all seen the massive transformation brought by the cloud. Companies now spin up compute power and storage with few clicks. But what if you could bring same level of agility and automation to the network? The network so far has been static, capital intensive, and asset setting. The network is now becoming a dynamic, programmable, and service platforms. That is the directions in which the network is, or network function is moving into. The shift to a dynamic, programmable platforms fundamentally benefits all stakeholders. Operators can perform their static and captive-intensive networks. Enterprises gain the flexibility to purchase connectivity as they need, even if on hourly basis, and with the guaranteed service levels, although simple on API calls. For developers, the platform provides a new foundation for innovation, allowing them to embed crucial capabilities like quality of service, locational data, edge connectivity directly into their applications. So today there are panelists, those who will be talking about the NaaS, a platform which is the future. It's not a vision for some distant future. The architectural foundations are already in place. Thanks to the tireless work of the bodies like 3GPP, ITU. In fact, the building blocks for network as service have existed since the release of 5G, release 15. The service-based architecture gave us a modular API-driven 5G core. And at the heart of that, we have the network exposure functions, the NEF, which acts as the network's secure API gateways. So this is providing the opportunities to slice the networks. It is the front door that allows the trusted application to access valuable network capabilities like quality of service, edge routing, even the status of the specific device. As we move forward to 4G, to 6G, 3GPP is expanding its foundation further. The discussion now includes the RAN exposure, which will allow programmatically to extend beyond the core into the radio domain. That means the applications will not only be able to be requested, The network slice into core, but also influence how radio resources like spectrum, cell load, beaming parameters are allocated to meet the service specific needs. So this unified exposure that across core and RAN is the next big leap. It will make 6G network truly intent driven and service hour. While 6G builds the network foundation, the larger NaaS ecosystem depends upon how multiple standardization and industry bodies align. ITUT Group 13, looks at future networks including IMT 2020 and beyond, has been developing the overarching architecture and policy vision for service-driven intelligent network. Many ITUT study group 13 recommendations define the framework for networks, softwareization, AI-assisted automation, and intent-based management, all key enablers of NaaS. ITUT year Y3500 recommendation define NaaS, a cloud-based category in which capability provided to the cloud service customer is transparent and transport connectivity and related network capabilities. It further defines the NaaS can provide application capabilities, this type, infrastructure capabilities type, and platform capabilities types. So three. So these are the directions NaaS is moving, and it is conserving the economy, because you invest, your investment will drastically reduced, whereas the resources being utilized optimally. So this today's panel discussion, I must appreciate the eminent panelists, those who will throw light on further to take the discussions further. Ultimately, is for India, it's not just a technological shift, it is an extraordinary opportunities. With our proven open API frameworks, from UPI to open network for digital commerce, we already embrace the principles of accessibility, trust-based digital platform. Extending this mindset to our network through NaaS will accelerate innovation and empower us to lead the new network economy. Of course, with exposure comes responsibility. Secure, trust, and regulatory oversight are essential pillars of NaaS system. API exposure must be controlled through the authentication, authorization, and auditing. Operators must maintain transparency on what network data is shared and with whom. Regulators can play an enabling role by promoting open standards. Interoperability and NaaS sandboxes, safe environment where startups and developers can experiment with network APIs. As we step into the new era, India has every reason to lead. We have one of the world's most advanced digital public infrastructure. We have deep partnership with global standards and standard bodies. We have a vibrant developer and startup ecosystems ready to innovate the top of the programmable networks. So with this, my best wishes, and we'll be getting much insight from the eminent panelists, those who they are confident in their own domain and this knowledge of network economy. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Shri Rudra sir, for the enlightening words. Truly, there is a remarkable opportunity for us to monetize, as well as it's an opportunity for our network to be part of a national economy going forward. Just so, thank you again for your time and keywords. Maybe I'll start with the fellow panelists. Thank you so much once again, for the audience, for everyone, us to gauge your thoughts. I think, Shrikant, we are hearing a lot about NaaS since a while, okay? And we know that a kind of transformation enterprises are having. They need agility, they need flexibility. How NaaS could be the enabler or a differentiator for them?
Yeah, hi. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So, thanks. That's a great question. If you look at the way the compute has evolved in the last decade, the way AWS has done it, converting it from a capex-driven mode to a pure OpEx mode, uh, that's the benefit which networks powered by cloud can actually build in. We all understand the huge amount of capex that. Okay, is it better? Okay, sure. So, okay, I'll probably repeat. Okay. Yeah. I hope it's audible now. Perfect. Okay. Sure. So I'll repeat myself. The way compute has evolved in the last decade, moving from a capex mode to an opex mode, that's a similar transition or a transformation we expect networks powered by cloud can actually bring in. We all understand that these are probably the largest capex that a telco will invest in. But the enterprises today, they need agility and, like you said, cost benefits when they are using the network from the telco. So, can a telco expose the network and give the control in the hands of the enterprises based on their demand? Can they scale up, scale down? That's one part of the NaaS economy. Now, let's look at the two parts which you mentioned agility. If you look at the event today, this India Mobile Congress, which is there for 5 days, we know that there's a large volume of visitors that are going to be there in this event. Can India Mobile Congress on its own, through an API, increase the connectivity on demand for these 4 days? That is what is possible in a NaaS economy. The control is with the enterprise. They don't need to go through the telco support and the channel. They can increase the capacity on demand. That's a very basic API that is exposed. Taking it further, if I want to build use cases around location, a telco has probably the most accurate location that an enterprise can get without the need for a GPS. So when we talk of IoT devices, when we talk of sensors, uh, embedding a GPS may become costly. But since they're already connected to the network, if the location can be exposed and leveraged by the developed economy, you can build a huge number of use cases around it. Similarly, telco has probably the best authentication data. Okay, a telco has set the gold standard in terms of identifying an individual using OTP as well as authentication in the network. Again, if something like this can be leveraged by the fintechs or by other enterprises, this changes the game in terms of authentication, making it more reliable and most trustworthy. So this is from the point of view of agility. From the point of view of cost, what happens is, as an enterprise, I do not need to invest upfront or deploy redundant capacity just because I might need it in a certain event. So this brings down my cost drastically from a capex model to an opex model. So these are the two benefits in terms of agility and cost that we expect that a cloud-driven model for a network can bring in.
No, that's a very good point, Mr. Shrikant. Maybe passing on to Mr. Nanda. To take this further, I understand there are benefits, okay, but at the same time, we need an ecosystem because
Right.
for the platforms to develop, for the platforms to flourish, as Shrikant mentioned, API ecosystem. Do we have the relevant hardware, softwares, the entire API orchestration in place so that enterprise can quickly adopt this?
Absolutely. So, yeah, thanks to the question. And yeah, talking of, on top of what Shrikant said, I think the timing for network as a service is right. Why I say this is because thanks to AI, today networking technologies, is fast, growing in terms of capacity. I mean, newer systems are being built. I mean, today we have a switch that can, go up to a capacity of 100 terabits. One port can handle 1.6 tera. So to handle all the, I mean, from an end customer point of view or an enterprise point of view who's trying to use network as a service, it places a new set of requirements. In order to fulfill those requirements, I think the hardware and the software is getting there, or it's already there. From an hardware standpoint, one of the key things that I would say is that the hardware needs to be open, programmable, disaggregated, and today we have systems that can do and provide all those functions. The second thing about software, when you build an NaaS type of infrastructure, you need not just one vendor or one, you need an ecosystem. You need multiple participants, be it vendors or infrastructure providers or operating system providers, should be able to, work together as a single system. So those systems have to be standardized and interoperable. And today we are deploying networks that are open, standardized, and interoperable. Systems from multiple vendors, hard software from operating systems from multiple vendors can work together as a single unit. So to conclude, I think the kind of transformation that has happened in the last 2-3 years, thanks to AI, I think the hardware and the software components of what is needed for AI is there. I mean, for network as a service is there. So on top, when we talk about hardware, software, I think there are multiple layers here. You need to define APIs, standard APIs and frameworks that every level of service that, that is provided to the upper layer, which in turn translates to the end user experience. I think those APIs, will need a developer ecosystem who can define, develop those APIs and build a service on top in a layered manner.
Maybe just to follow up, Nanda, you were mentioning about AI.
Correct.
Is AI going to be the enabler for NaaS to happen?
So let me clarify. So what the reason I took AI as an example here was, there are a lot of hyperscalers and especially in the West, who are trying to build very large training systems, running very large models. All the hyperscalers are building. In order to build such large AI systems or AI clusters, they need a network to connect all the GPUs. So what I was trying to say is that they have built such large systems and they have driven the cost down so much that network as a service infrastructure seems more and more possible. The cost points are getting there, the capacities are getting there, and the price and the power per bit is all going down, which is all working well towards for network as a service kind of an infrastructure. Yeah.
Well, that's a great thought. Maybe over to you, Kishore. I think capacity is one of the points which both the fellow panelists have spoken about. And I think when we talk about capacity, it's a scalability of the platforms. How do you see in terms of the architectures, the stacks that are available with the ecosystem we have? And to connect the networks, there is the testing aspect that also needs to be looked at. How do you see that is shaping up?
Okay, so let me give my thoughts there, right? The stage is like a perfectly set because Shrikant spoke about the need for NaaS, and then Nanda went a little deeper into understanding kind of a basic principles that you require for enabling a NaaS deployment as such. If you talk about the stack, I think from my perspective, working with multiple different customers, etc., from a traditional Ethernet perspective or TCP OSI layer, for example, nothing much has changed. But on the top, because this is completely based on microservices, it's all very miniature in size, all these respective applications, to be able to serve the amount of latency, throughput, etc. They need to have this gateway between multiple different external and internal entities as well, first of all. So according to me, that should be on the top, the gateway itself. After that comes your control plane, which is obviously the heart of the entire mechanism or a system itself. And between these multiple gateways, both internal, external, the control system, for example, there has to be security as well taken care into consideration, right? So the security is not something that you go back and then plug into the network after the network has been built. It should be starting from the ground up itself. So the protocols like MTLS, for example, OAuth or OIDC, for example, plays a very critical role in enabling the security as well end-to-end fabric, right? And then comes your data plane. Ultimately, a network is being deployed as a service, for example, is to cater to requirements by enterprises, as a data as such. When I talk about data, back in the 4G days, data was one of the killer use case, right? That triggered the 4G adoption. In the 5G, what happens is, I believe it's going to be latency, right? And people are willing to pay that extra amount of money to have a consistent amount of predictable latency as well, right? Now, to ensure that data throughput is being defined, people are able to achieve the amount of throughput what they expect for, what they actually pay for, with a qualified amount of latency, right? We need to have those acceleration technologies that comes, the third in the layer. DPDK, for example, SRIOV, huge pages, those aspects, right? And then since the entire architecture is microservices based, there should be a service mesh that kind of puts them all together. High availability, for example, load balancing, for example, is all being taken care of, right? Ultimately comes your, how easily can you go back and then scale the continuous integration, development, testing also plays an important role. So when we started, like at Pyron Communications, when we started working with multiple different customers, people deploy a network, people are able to run basic calls, etc. Are you able to scale? You deploy a network with a particular SLA in mind. So testing those aspects plays a very important role. And I think Srikanth and everybody will agree that with every new release, every new features being added, majorly the performance is one of the criteria why those gets actually added, right? So testing that becomes also very important, according to me, like performance testing, compliance testing, functional validation, all of those aspects.
And for enterprises to get NaaS implemented, maybe for any use case, how they should approach? Should they have an approach of more like what you have mentioned, the OSS, BSS, and the top layer? Or because for them, they cannot just change overnight. How do you suggest for them to adopt any use case?
Yeah, so we did a survey, we did a research actually, because we perform testing across operators, enterprises across the globe. If you look at, you have a core deployed at the center, for example. We were able to hit a latency of 70 milliseconds, which is completely not acceptable for enterprises. Right? Then we started migrating the core closer to the consumer, into the city peering point, for example. That brought down the latency to 20 milliseconds. But then majority of the applications what we are developing these days, AR, VR, for example, medicals, etc., they demand a latency of around 7 to 10 milliseconds, right? So the next point is how can we get that further closer? Like AWS, for example, has a solution called Outpost, where the entire content what you need is getting closer to the consumer, right in the enterprise itself. That will be able to hit the latency of around 7 to 10 milliseconds, what we require. So now, depending on the enterprise's use cases, right, the deployment models changes. What is the latency requirement that you need? Is it going to be at the data centers, at the city peering point, or within your premise itself? So it varies on the architecture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe a follow-up question to Mr. Alok. See, I think we heard that operators play a pivotal role in doing the NaaS. Now, how do you see it is going? Because I think we all understood their benefits, agility, scalability, capacity, but there's also a concern on data sovereignty. Connecting networks, different operator networks doing a slicing has always been a challenge. How do you see that sovereignty? How do you see, you know, in terms of the protocols, in terms of the developments in the policy making? How is it shaping up? Do you see uh, a huge uptake that is going to happen, or it will be a selective approach?
Yeah, so I think there are two parts to this before I try and answer your question. One part is I think the sovereignty question is absolutely central, at least in the India context, and it is being also acknowledged and deployed the world over. We already have stories across countries in Europe, etc., etc. So I think the way at least we are thinking about it in Airtel, that it has to be center of anything that we are designing in terms of future. Uh, that includes the data plane, that includes the control plane, both. That is, I think, point one. And I think there are enough and more directives and enablements from the government side, which are sort of nudging all of us to think more in this direction. Is it, uh, is it going to be one or two pieces that we can go and implement and say we are done? I don't think so. I think it's a journey because we are where we are over a period of years and decades, and therefore it takes time to get all the ecosystem aligned. That's point one. The point two on the question of protocols is that when we think about NaaS, there are two parts to this. One part is the programmable network. When you need, how much you need. Can this be programmable by the user? This is one aspect of it. The other aspect is that this network is not a standalone isolated island. It is adjacent to the security, it is adjacent to the routing capability, it is adjacent to application optimizations and a few other things. So when we think about NaaS as a service, it is all of this put together as a service and being programmable, right? Those of us who've been in this business know if you take any area, let's take networks. How many networks do we have in India? And we don't just think Airtel and Jio from a 4G, 5G standpoint. If you include the ISPs, there are hundreds, right? If you talk about the security landscape, there are at least 20 top technologies and so on and so forth. So when you're thinking about protocols and integrating all of this as one service to a pizza shop or to a factory or to whatever usable aspect is, it is obviously a lot of work to be done. Have we made some progress? Yes, definitely, some baby steps, but I think it's a long way to go.
And do you think, with the AI coming in, I know we keep hearing about new technologies coming in. Some fizzle out, some go a long way. Is NaaS getting a lot of center stage with AI coming in, or it is complementing it?
Uh, it is absolutely going to be the center stage. There is no two ways about it, for a very simple reason that NaaS is going to be the backbone on which everything else gets enabled. So unless this backbone starts living up to the business needs, which are very, very simple. And I met somebody at the IMC itself who just wants to run a pizza store and wants to really quadruple, expand in 6 months, right? Or a factory who wants to does a quality inspection humanless, right? The business uses and benefits are very, very simple. They cannot be enabled without NaaS being at the backbone.
Got it. Maybe I'll pass it on to Mr. Suresh with the research hat on. How do you see the standards are shaping up? Because one side we have the existing platforms, and then we have to also innovate. I think some of the fellow panelists said it's the API developments, the development ecosystem communities, they all need to come up. How do you think that is going to be?
So, firstly, very fascinating panel, and I think what I would like to say is, technology is moving quite fast, right? And one of the challenges that we face in standards is, standardization process takes takes a bit of a time because you need to try to build consensus among all these stakeholders, right? But actually going to you know, from traditional networks like, you know, 3G, 4G, and then, you know, 5G. 5G made this big shift from, you know, having a sort of one box or, you know, kind of a fixed network into a lot of dimensions, right? So we brought in 5G private networks, and then we brought in, you know, network slicing, and then we brought in, you know, capability exposure, right, which I think some of you have mentioned. So there are a lot of these functionalities that have come in, and you know, then came the cloud and edge, and some of you here also spoke about that. So I feel, you know, the technologies you know, have brought in 5G, and we also have now starting to talk about 6G, and then we are waiting for 5G deployments to, you know, be full-fledged and deployed. So I think a lot of these technologies, the reason I say this is because, you know, all of these have been sort of elements to drive NaaS as a platform, right? So it's very important to, I mean, all of these bring different aspects depending on the consumer and the industry. But also in 6G now, you've been asking about AI. So, I mean, 6G, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, we are kind of thinking how we can fit in AI, I mean, make it more AI native, compute native, also taking this capability exposure to the next level. Because one of the big challenge we find in standards is we're not getting all the stakeholders, you know, at the same table. We have a lot of, from the telecoms point of view, we think, I mean, we have our networks with all these features that I mentioned. There's a lot of capabilities that are hidden in the network, which are not, you know, actually exposed to the consumers. So how do we actually abstract them, get it to the most simple way? Of course, I think somebody mentioned that, you know, there's many layers, but, you know, that's too much complex for the end user. So how do you make it so simple that, you know, you can sort of do it, you know, like just like one or two APIs or just with intents, right? So that's the kind of direction that we are seeing with 6G. I think there's a lot of tech is kind of coming. I would say, you know, it's on its way. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, maybe a follow-up question. I think you also mentioned on 6G, Rudraji also mentioned on India paving the way for 6G. See, for 5G, we may not have been the first adopter, but the fast adopter. I think for 6G, how do you see NaaS going to be impactful? Do you see if we expedite NaaS implementations, it's going to be a win-win for us even to implement 6G? How do you see that perspective?
I think it's going to be much better than 5G as a whole, because I think India, I think our minister was saying, you know, we walked with 4G, and, you know, we followed in 4G, and we walked with 5G, and then we're going to lead. So, you know, with everything that, you know, we are set up to do in the next generation, I think, you know, and you know, the way we are adopting 5G now, and you know, I think Alok has actually mentioned, you know, what they're doing in Airtel, but you know, with all of this, I believe it's going to create a big impact because the diversity is high in India, right? So we have a lot of consumers that are very diverse in the kind of services that we have in India, which are very unique. So I think you know, when you have more unique services, then, you know, they're more reactive and sorry, more proactive. And I think NaaS, you know, as an impetus that can actually, you know, enable those diversity in services. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe I'll come back to Shrikant again. So Shrikant, I think if we need to conclude, maybe with a view from your side, how do you think can we make a win-win out of it? Because there has to be a business viability for the enterprises. At the same time, there has to be some kind of a solution which is cost effective from you, from the operators working together. How do you think, you know, it is going to be for the next 2 years?
So that's actually a very good question. If you look at it, the entire ecosystem, okay, and I would say it's not just a win-win; it's a win-win-win. if you look at the key players in the ecosystem, you have the telecom operators, you would have the cloud providers, and you would have the enterprises. Now, this becomes a win-win-win when you leverage the strength of each of them. So let's start with the operator. Now, what does the operator bring on the table? They, of course, bring the network, but at the same time, they also bring a vast amount of information that the network has, which can be leveraged for a lot of enterprise use cases. So I give examples of authentication, location, or bandwidth on demand. So these are the things which a telco brings on the table beyond a pure voice and data plan. And that's where telcos will be able to convert their most expensive asset, which is a network, to a more monetizable asset today. So that's the win for the telco. Now, what does a hyperscaler bring on the table? Something like an AWS. What AWS enables is using these network APIs, create an entire developer ecosystem which can build use cases that probably may be limited if a telco is the only one doing it. So when you open up the entire API on a marketplace which AWS brings, and then you let the developers use their innovation, use the startup mindset, build use cases around it, it explodes. It brings an exponential growth to the entire NaaS economy. Lastly, and because we all know that there's a lot of edge AI happening these days, the use cases which a telco, an enterprise, and a hyperscaler bring around edge AI will bring the realistic returns from these kind of investments. So you have to combine the strength of each player, build a use case, and take it to the market. And that's where I see the real win happens for all of us.
Sure, thank you. Maybe, Nanda, what is your opinion? I think what Shrikant also mentioned, it's a use case specific. So, do you see NaaS is going to be large scale implementations or more towards the connected use cases, be it in different sectors, or maybe, looking at certain areas where enterprise can be benefited? How do you see the implementation going to happen?
I think from an use case or an application point of view, so each of those use cases, each of those applications places unique set of requirements on the NaaS, right? The NaaS infrastructure will have to support these varied, and that is the only way it will be able to support all the different applications and use cases. I believe, NaaS to take off, at some point you need some sort of an standards body or a consortium where you have all the players together, sitting together and saying, as a user, what do you expect from the NaaS infrastructure? As a NaaS infrastructure provider or a vendor, what do you need to provide to bring, bring value or fulfill the necessary requirements that is placed on the NaaS from different. So again, I was talking about, multiple layers. So each of those layers will have to be standardized, abstracted, well defined, and consistent. And with that, with some sort of a collaboration, I think we will be able to make NaaS really support a varied set of use cases, irrespective of what kind of requirement it places on the network.
Thank you. Maybe Kishore, what are your closing thoughts? If NaaS needs to become a growth enabler for the enterprises, what are the top two or three priorities for the leaders or maybe for the enterprise you will talk about?
What are the, sorry, two or three what?
Two top priorities for NaaS to become a growth enabler for the economy.
So look, basically the NaaS network that we're talking about, right, has to enable the required services what the enterprise requires actually. I believe if, as I mentioned previously as well, right, if it is only going to be like a NaaS or enterprise looking at just data plane throughput, for example, then it's not mandatory that you have to have 5G as such, right? 4G can do that. So for that, enterprises to be able to adopt to NaaS, the main key point is, I would say in my opinion, is latency, plus the availability of it. I think as Alok mentioned as well, right? It's like how much you need and when you need it. Because enterprises cannot afford as much as you want to charge. it should be provided in a fashion that you're able to consume it at in real time, and be also able to monetize that effectively so that they'll be able to flourish it. So it plays a very important role as to, it's not about technology as such, it's about how you make it available for the enterprises. Yeah.
Got
That's
it.
my
Maybe,
opinion.
maybe Alok, for the enterprises to adopt NaaS, sometimes they look at the ROI, and then we have infrastructure sometimes become a challenge to get to a edge at the core, which you have been mentioning. How do you see? What is your vision as a leader? It is going to shape up.
Uh, I think it's a matter of time. Eventually, the way we know the services of network and telcos today, I don't think will exist. That's the final vision. Eventually, it will be all NaaS. Some things which can speed up or slow down this journey is the respective environment that exists. As an example, in a banking ecosystem, which is a very heavy regulated for all the right reasons, NaaS is still in that banking environment. It is not a public NaaS, so to say, right? The example that Shrikant was mentioning is very closely guarded, and we being a telco know that very well, about where that borderline is of what can be monetized and what does not be monetized. I think some of these elements, how they play out in the future, will have to be seen, which can enhance or slow down. But as a direction, it is going to be all pervasive. It will replace the way we know connectivity and network today.
Sure. Maybe a concluding remark from Suresh. I think Alok just mentioned on the financing sector, finance, BFSI, I think finance sector. How do you look at the other sectors? We have Industry 4.0, we have smart cities, which is hugely dependent on digital infrastructure. Do you see the NaaS will have an impact on that?
Definitely, because the diversity that we have. I mean, one of the fundamental aspects of NaaS is providing this customization and on-demand type of services. So, I mean, like I said, we from a telecom's side, we've been looking at human users or consumers as just them, like doing voice calls and text messages or whatever. But I think this is going to be a huge revolution in terms of the types of industries that we're going to serve. So I think uh, there's a lot of industries. I mean, not just finance, but I think critical comms is one. It's going to be a huge thing. And then I think a lot of the automation will, I think, pick up quite much. I mean, we have done a lot in 5G. We are, kind of waiting to see, how that takes off. But I believe, the spectrum is wide, right? So I know it's hard. I mean, people say, okay, you brought in so much stuff and we don't see it, but these things take time, right? So I think we need to have those one or two killer services that take off, and then I think the revolution will be big. So we just need to be patient, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space, and I think NaaS is the fundamental enabler.
Thank you, Suresh. I think this is quite optimistic. I've jotted some key points that NaaS is not only a telecom trend, but it's a national opportunity. It's all about right intent and vision. And from the leaders, we have a deep intent, towards the economy, because it's not the network economy. It is going to have a national innovation with NaaS in place. I think with this, I end the session. Maybe before I conclude this, any questions from the audience, please, for our fellow panelists before we conclude the discussion? Yes, please.
Thanks a lot. A very good discussion, good panel. But again, as telecom, what we want. As a telecom, what we want as a customer. We want telecom must be just like Aladdin ka chirag. You say the things are there. And there are a lot of applications, plain things has to be done. And you will write on the NaaS and everything will happen.
Yes.
Okay. So that should be our vision to do that. not the voice call, data call, and this call and that call. So our NaaS, our system should be capable of doing that thing. I don't know when it's going to happen, but very soon.
Would you like to answer? Thank you so much. Any other questions, please? Yeah.
Hi. I'm Salil. I'm from
And can you
Shaurya.
also, sorry, can you also tell this question is for which panelist, please?
Yeah, I believe it could be for Alok and for Suresh. I heard about standardization and I heard about what Amazon is doing, what Edge Core is doing, and what Kishorji mentioned. So we are building up NaaS as a service. We are an IP1. We are trying to build a layer that will connect enterprise. We want to first understand if there is a standardization. I believe today there isn't any. Please correct my understanding. So there are TM Forum APIs that you can consume, but again, they are more on the telecom domain of your BSS OSS layer. Today there isn't any. So how does a company offer NaaS? I think this could be perhaps for Alok.
Sorry, I didn't quite get this. Your question is that the standards already exist and
No, there aren't any standards today. So how do you, make sure that NaaS follows a particular standard for the enterprise? So let's say if you want to offer NaaS to an enterprise, there isn't a standard, it's evolving. What is the closest standard that you see that a customer should look at? I mean, when you offer enterprise a product or a service, he looks at standards and then he subscribes to the plan or the service, right?
I'll try and answer as best as I can. It's a complicated ecosystem. So the network is obviously built up and different elements of NaaS, as I was alluding to, by different technologies, right? There is a OTN layer, there is an IP layer, and so on and so forth. Each of them are trying to adopt open standards now. That's one fundamental layer. On top of it, you try and create services, and that service can be across multiple telcos, operators, and so on and so forth, right? That's the service creation bit of it, where probably frameworks like MEF, etc., play a critical role to create seamless services across geographies, across people, etc. So I don't think it's a situation where this doesn't exist. I think, as probably Suresh was alluding to, a lot more adoption work still needs to be done, and a lot more collaboration needs to happen across these layers, is what probably I think.
Yeah, you're right. Probably MEF could allude to this. Any comments from your side?
I can maybe add to what Alok said. I mean, it's a complex system. I mean, we have to admit that. And if you're looking for one piece of standard that solves all your problems, you're not going to have it. But I think there is need to be some sort of consolidation. I feel. I feel. There's probably many standards out there which are there for whatever reason. I believe there has to be because like exactly you asked, right? I mean, if you want to start off and build a service based on one standard, I mean it's highly complex, right? So there has to be somebody has to look at all these pieces and sort of at least consolidate them so it makes it easy for people like you and others who are looking for because interoperability is extremely important, right? If there's no interoperability, I mean we're all in this together, right? So I believe I'm really glad that hyperscalers and operators and vendors and everybody are sitting here. So I think it's people have to talk to each other more. I mean, forums need to talk to each other more. But so, by the way, I don't know which company you represent, but
I'm from Shaurya Teleservices. We have a booth at D9
okay.
Hall 1.
Right.
So please.
So we do have a standards body in India as well. So it's
Great.
called TSDSI, Telecom Standards for India. So that's another maybe a starting point for you to sort of engage. But maybe we can catch up offline as well. I can kind of guide you.
Perfect.
But stuff is out there, and there's work to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Maybe the quick last question for the session.
Yeah, hi. I have a question with the Kishore. Kishore, in your point, you mentions that, right? Security cannot be just plugged in. When network running, you plugged in some securities and things work perfectly. And you highlighted for gateway testing. So, how typically testing you have seen in, especially India ecosystem, or how you compare the testings, especially on the productions or the pre-production as compared to US or Europe market with India?
Sorry. Okay. Uh, Back in the 4G days, right? People did not hear about the pre-production network itself. People used to do the testing in the lab and then migrate towards the live network. Since the beginning of 5G in 17 onwards, we are seeing an emergence of pre-production network coming into existence as well, right? So now a majority of the operators across the globe, in India as well, they have a lab network, they qualify those test cases, they have a live network, they replicate the live network into a pre-production network as well. And then go back and then execute those change management use cases, lifecycle management use cases into the pre-production network before they roll out the respective services, right? And they use a lot of tools that we're talking about, and they're completely automated, you know. And typically, what used to be like 3 or 4 test cases that is run on the field in the past, today it's got translated to more than, I think, 15, 16,000 test cases on every single day in the pre-production network. So there's been a lot of change that's currently happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe a lot to catch up with the panelists. With this, we conclude the session, and a huge round of applause to the panelists. Thank you for your time. Maybe
Thank you everyone. I just request Mr. Yogesh Sharma to present a token of appreciation for all the respected speakers, and thanks to everyone for such a wonderful and insightful session.